Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zero Day Dispatch's dialogue series Beyond the Hype, where we examine how the promises surrounding STEM education meet the realities of an AI-driven world. I'm Priya, the founder of Zero Day Dispatch, and I'm delighted to host today's conversation with Irini Courtney, our community outreach coordinator. We are also joined by Rohana, our cyber assistant. This series began with a simple observation. For years, a STEM or computer science degree was presented as a clear pathway to stability and mobility. Yet, artificial intelligence has unsettled that certainty. Students enter programs with high expectations, universities continue to market degrees as golden tickets, and the job market shifts beneath everyone's feet. The gap between promise and reality is especially sharp for international and immigrant graduates who often navigate life-changing debt, visa restrictions, and a global job market reshaped by AI. This tension forms the backbone of our series, which brings together professors, industry voices, recent graduates, and students from the low and middle income countries to consider what the future of STEM education looks like when AI dominates both narratives and hiring pipelines. Before we introduce our guest speaker on the future of STEM degrees in the AI era, Irini will outline some housekeeping rules for this session. Hi, Irini.
Hi, Priya, and thank you so much. Welcome, everyone, and hi, Rohana. Before we dive in, let me quickly run through some tips to help us have a great session together. So, firstly, this is going to be a 1 hour discussion. There will be a 10 to 12 minutes allotted to our guest speaker. The last 15 minutes are allocated to the audience for their questions. Please be aware that this session is being recorded. By participating, you consent to being recorded. All attendees will be muted throughout the presentation. Only the speaker and hosts will have the video on. Attendees can keep their video off or on. Please use the chat box to submit questions. We will address them during the Q&A session at the end. And also, we recommend using Speaker View for your best experience. And this recording will be submitted to various social media outlets. It will be free of charge and for educational purposes only. So for now, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Orin Davis, an organizational psychologist who studies how people build meaningful careers in environments shaped by rapid technological change. His work spans talent strategy, innovation, and the human side of AI adoption with a focus on how graduates navigate shifting expectations and evolving skill demands. So he has advised companies, taught for more than 15 years, and helped students and professionals rethink how to chart sustainable paths in fields transformed by automation. And on this note, welcome, Dr. Davis, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to join y'all. So just as a kickoff here, I want to talk a little bit about what AI is looking like as far as taking over the job market, taking over education, like what's actually happening here, because there's a lot of hype about what everybody's saying. Everybody thinks that at this point AI is going to be replacing professors, AI is going to be replacing thinkers, AI is going to be replacing humans. So let's just start with like what AI actually does well. And for some of you, this may be a bit of review. For some people, this is going to be a little bit basic, but I just really want to start with what AI does well, because that'll give us a really good clue into what people think AI does well that it actually doesn't. The main thing that AI does well is things that are algorithmic, right? I mean, this is still based on computer programs. So these are programs that are they're like recipes, right? I need you to do this thing followed by that thing. The clearer the instructions, the better the AI can do it for us. But AI doesn't think, right? AI doesn't make insights. AI is, I remember somebody joking that AI is a Markov chain on steroids. I don't remember who said that, but they should get a lot of credit for a great joke. I hope if anybody finds out that they can post it. But the thing is that this is still all just mathematical relationships. It's recipes. Mathematical relationships and recipes are great, but that's not going to be insight. That's not going to be exceptions. And AI has a lot of information to draw on, so it's going to have an extremely broad range of information to draw on. But here's the thing. You can sort of teach AI what information is good and what information is not, but it's only going to be based on what humans say about it. But to an extent, how good are humans in general at identifying quality information? And this is your first cue as to where education is going to be coming in the future of AI. Helping you learn how to assess the quality of the information you get back. You put something into AI. AI, as we know, hallucinates. We've seen that AI pulls things out of thin air. AI will make things up. How do you know that it did? What are your clues that it did? Will you have the clues that it did? So teaching people to be an effective consumer of information so that you can handle the AI, because AI doesn't assess quality of information very well, is going to be one of the first places that STEM education needs to go. It needs to teach people how to identify between fluff and real signal, real content, real information. What's true and what's not. How do you know what's true and what's not? And an example I'd like to give here is coming from, let's say, mathematics, right? If I give you the math problem, 1,247,339 times 8,236,349, you probably can't get the answer to that off the top of your head. But if I do suggest that the answer is 20,244,762, you know that answer is wrong. Because any two numbers that end in 9, when multiplied together, will have a last digit of, the product will have a last digit of 1. And it's that kind of thing. So you know that my answer, because it had the last digit of 2, is definitely wrong. You may not know what the answer is, but you already know that I gave a bad one. And it's that kind of thinking that you need to be developing in STEM education in order to recognize when AI gave you an answer that might be bad. It's that sort of analogy of knowing that two numbers multiplied by 9 are going to have a product that ends in 1. And that's kind of the important detail here, is remembering that, like, learning these rules of how you know that you got a right answer or you got a wrong answer, because AI is just going to go through algorithmic recipes. And even if we make them very sophisticated recipes, even if we teach them these things are good and these things are not, it's still going to be based on general views. And people might say, well, we trained it on experts. Did you now? Because I'm watching how much people are paying for getting experts to train their AI. And I can tell you that almost all the companies out there are grossly underpaying experts to train AI, which means that most of the people that are really elite on this are not going to take that level of money to train the AI, which means that when they say AI is being trained by experts, some and some. There will be some experts, but this is going to be limited. You're certainly not going to get elite people training AI unless these people have a hell of a budget. So from this, we're seeing that AI really, it's going to have some experts teaching it, but unless they can restrict the AI to experts and not let it get trained by all the other information out there, which is not necessarily a good idea because it needs to learn from a wider range of people, you're going to end up with an AI system that's average. AI is going to generally be average. The problem is, in job markets, we don't want average. So you have to learn all the average stuff, and then you need to learn to go beyond it in STEM education. So we who are teaching STEM education, we're going to have to adjust the education system so that we're teaching you how to be effective consumers of information, how to identify truth, how to go beyond the average, because that's all AI is going to do. And the more that judgment and heuristics and creativity are going to be required, we're going to need to make sure that the education system looks more like that. So creativity also is something that AI doesn't do very well. Because when you think about it, real creativity, this is hard to get to. We ask people, for example, to do unusual uses tasks, right? Come up with as many unusual uses as you can for a brick, let's say. And what we find, incidentally, is that AI actually outperforms humans on this, because it's just got a bigger library to draw from in a short amount of time. Usually when we do something like this, it's a time task. So yes, AI can do that better because AI's got a bigger library. AI's got more computing power. So coming up with a list of things, that's easy. Figuring out what to do with that list. How do you actually, when you come up with unusual uses for a brick, how many of those are really pragmatic or practical? or effective, even if they are unusual uses for a brick. AI is not as good at figuring that out. Now, it can still do it reasonably, but it's not going to be as good as humans are. And again, when you're looking at elite performance, AI does not outperform elites. And even in some of my own work on creativity, I found that AI does not outperform professionals with years of experience. It's helpful, and it helps people with years of experience do their tasks and use their methods more efficiently, more effectively. But it still requires the human methods, the human creativity, the human training in critical thinking, in creative thinking, in creative problem solving, because all AI is drawing from is the generic information out there. So when it comes to the job market, if you look at how we do candidate selection, we have a really bad way of doing it in general. We're not very good at hiring people or at picking people. This is a lot of my work as a consultant. I help companies come up with better ways of hiring people and making sure that they're using more fair methods, that they're getting more diverse and inclusive candidate pools, and are bringing them into the company and giving them a better experience so that they can do their best work. But the thing is, we've still really got an industrial era model on this. And my favorite proof of this is that we're still thinking about hourly rates. Knowledge work is not an hourly type task. Making widgets is an hourly type task. Knowledge work's not. So when we've got AI systems that are building upon the notion that we're doing factory work, or that when we're using factory level hiring systems, all AI is going to do is take a bad thing and put it on steroids. It takes a bad thing, it makes it a lot worse. So right now, we're still having to revamp how we hire. If we try to put AI on top of that, it's the Geico rule, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So AI is just going to make this a hell of a lot worse. And it means that since people don't know what they're looking for in the first place, AI is going to make us really not know what we're looking for. And since we often don't know how to explain or write jobs, AI is going to do even worse at writing job descriptions. Because all it's doing is taking everybody's bad habits and accelerating them on both sides of the matching process of hiring. So most of the hiring systems you see out there, they're not really geared to recognize people's strengths or to recognize people's abilities or to recognize where they can actually add value. The problem is people themselves are not learning how to do that either. If you think about it, when you go to career centers at universities, I've had students complaining to me that they're not coming out of there with anything other than generic resumes, or they don't really know who they are or what they're about or how they can uniquely talk about themselves in an interview. And yes, they've learned the STAR method and they've learned a whole bunch of other ways to explain themselves, but they feel like they're contorting themselves into formulas rather than being able to be themselves and to really find out and intuit what they do well and what they do effectively. But that knowledge, the uniqueness is going to become all the more important when we've got AI that can just be average, that can do all the generic things. So we're going to have to start finding hiring systems that take us beyond the generic. But interestingly enough, AI is still a tool. And like all tools, it's great. I mean, think about it this way. Would you like to pound in a nail with your fist? Would you like to shove it in with the palm of your hand? Or would you like to take a hammer? And being able to take a hammer, it's not quite as easy as it sounds. Hammers are very simple tools. And you're probably thinking as I'm saying that, well, yes, hammers are very simple tools. And yet, how many times have you whacked your own hand with that hammer? So if it's such a simple tool, how come so many people get injured using one? Knives, very simple tools, and yet how many people get injured using one? And so on. So being able to use a tool effectively is going to be critical, and effectively means you don't get hurt and the company doesn't get hurt and your teammates don't get hurt and so on. So, one of the questions I'm seeing in the chat is what skills are actually valuable in candidates now that AI can handle much of the technical execution. Let me start with, I don't believe AI can handle that much of the technical execution yet. It can handle the basics. But as a programmer friend of mine who is, been programming for decades and, has AI as available to them, basically pointed out if AI is so great, then why is everybody being forced to use it? Because a lot of people are finding that AI is not helping them out. And like when you talk to people privately, people are saying, in public, oh yeah, AI is so great. This is helping us. This can do all sorts of amazing things. Talk to people privately and they go, oh my God, this thing makes so many errors. This is screwing everything up. This is taking me longer to do now that I need to use AI. That's partly because they're not as good at using the tool, but it's also because the tool is not very good. Now, we're looking at the future where the tools will get better. So let's assume down the pike, especially if you are students, especially if you're undergrads, the tools will be getting better. So your job is learning how to use the tools without getting hurt. Figure out what the tools are really good at, figure out where they're not. You don't want to use a screwdriver to whack in a nail. And you don't want to use a hammer to whack in a screw. So it's figuring out exactly what the tool can do, where it saves you time, where it saves you effort, where it saves you energy, where it gives you right answers, where it gives you wrong answers. And the better you know that, the better you're going to be at using the tool. This is like a knife skills class, right? I mean, most people can cut vegetables with a knife. It's not very hard. And even most of the time, people can cut vegetables with a knife without even hurting themselves, but there are exceptions to that also. But what I'm pointing out here is that there's that. But then, when you watch some of the cooking shows out there, you see these people like doing incredible stuff with the knife. You're like, I don't know how to do that. Yeah, that needs to be you with the AI tools of your field. If you're writing, how do you get AI to work with your voice, your style, and not corrupt that with generic stuff? Not corrupt it with other voices. How do you use your AI to become more of a twin to sound like you? How do you get AI to look at your work and maybe edit it in the ways that you might want to? Or if you're making presentations or things like that. But most important to that is making sure you know your own style. So part of what is one of the most valuable skills, and people ask me, like, what is the most valuable skill people can have? And I tell people that it's knowing yourself, right? When I look at all the research and when I look at everything about well-being and career success and all the rest of those things, and people ask me, what is your number one piece of advice? It's this: temet nosce, know thyself, right? Really know who you are, really know what your style is, what you like, what you don't, what your preferences are. Because then when you're given a tool, you can use that tool to augment what you do. But if you don't know yourself first, then you're going to let the tool tell you. So you got to go and get to know yourself first, shake hands with yourself, as it were. Get to know yourself, your strengths, your preferences, your abilities, your experiences, your uniqueness. Then start incorporating the tool so that the tool helps you where you need it. And that's a critical thing. I see a question here: to what extent are reductions in entry-level roles driven by assumptions about AI's capability that may exceed its current practical limits? Fully. I'm just going to say fully because right now people really are very much overestimating what AI can do. Now, down the pike, a lot of the things that we are suggesting that AI may be able to do, it probably is going to be able to do. And some of the things that we're really hoping that AI could do, for example, washing our dishes, cleaning our houses, all the rest of that stuff, that's actually rather hard to pull off. 3D vision is kind of tricky to pull off. Movement, coordination, holding things, moving things, seeing the space, it's kind of hard. AI is very much getting there, and let's say, 10, 15 years, probably at the latest, we'll start having things like that, which would be fantastic. But when we're talking about AI's ability to think, we're really overdoing that, because part of what we're doing is the hype comes from a lot of average people using AI and getting average results, right? Everybody's amazed at what Google can find. Well, yeah, because it's really just doing searches faster. AI is doing a lot of searches through bigger libraries faster. So you think of it as a retrieval device, and it's a very good one. It's very good at retrieving information. And that's the sort of thing where it's going to get better and better at retrieving information. It's going to get better and better at identifying information. But it's not really going to replace entry level roles so much as it's going to change entry level roles. Whereas once upon a time at the entry level, you were sometimes doing like basic math, back of the envelope calculations. You were spending a lot of time doing the rote work, organizing files, paper clipping things, shifting papers around and all that stuff. Well, now we've got we've got computers that can do files and file management and all the rest of that stuff. A lot less paper these days. That's cool. So then you had to learn how to use the computers to organize documents and details and things along those lines. But what's interesting is if you don't, you still need your own organizational system in your head. That's the part that you've got to be able to do well because AI can offer existing organizational systems, but it's not going to do such a great job of customizing those. And people are thinking that AI, because it can tell you a whole bunch of different organizational systems, that it can customize them to your office, that you can just say, okay, but these are my parameters, now bend it to me. AI doesn't do that very well because AI doesn't know you very well. And AI can ask you questions. You might be thinking, well, AI can ask me questions to get to know me well. Who knows whether it's going to ask the right questions? Who knows whether AI is going to take the answers to those questions and turn that into accurate knowledge of you? And if you don't know yourself very well, AI can start to tell you who you are, and you might think that that's true. My favorite proof of this is how many people think that their MBTI personality type actually is who they are. First of all, MBTI, Myers-Briggs, well debunked at this point. That's just fluff. And horoscopes, also fluff. And yet, we're all using them. But think about it that way. People say, oh yeah, for example, I'm a Scorpio. So people say, oh yeah, you're a Scorpio. You're like this. You're like that. This is the Barnum effect, folks. Look that one up. It's a fun idea. But no, this is fluff. But we're assuming, just like we're assuming that our signs tell us who we are, that our Myers-Briggs type tells us who we are, we think that AI can tell us who we are. No, it can't. And that set of assumptions that AI can give us understanding, that AI can give insight, it doesn't. It's just combining, recombining, maybe finding combinations that didn't exist before, but that doesn't mean that it's actually doing the job. It's not doing the job. It's doing precursors to the job. And if you're going for the entry level, you need to think about the fact that that's all AI is going to do. But if you know yourself, you know your uniqueness, and you get expertise in the field, you learn what's true, you learn what's not, you can then wield the AI instead of the AI wielding you. But right now we're thinking that AI is going to wield us. Well, it will if we're stupid enough to let it. Just like if we're stupid enough to let MBTI, types tell us, oh, I'm just an introvert. I hate parties, so I should never go to parties. Bad idea. Not true either. So I tell you all that so that I think we can all get a deeper understanding of what kind of misconceptions and what kinds of assumptions people are making about AI's capabilities that are exceeding here, rather than just saying, yeah, they're fully exceeding it. They are. I see the question, how should universities redefine the purpose of a STEM degree now that AI is embedded across most professions? Well, actually, I don't think we need to redefine the purpose of a STEM degree at all. It is the purpose of a STEM degree is what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. How do we figure out the truth? How do we figure out how our universe, how our bodies, how our systems, how our elements, how everything works? That's what science is really about. How does everything work, and how do we use it better and more effectively? So I don't think we need to change the purpose of a STEM degree. And I even think that, the only thing that we really should be doing is updating the curricula. How do we think about memorization? How do we think about understanding? How do we think about creativity? What is the baseline level for expertise? What is the state of the knowledge now? But that's all just that's just devil in the details. That's the devil being in the details. The purpose of a STEM degree is still the pursuit of truth, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, math in that sense, we still do math. And it's still going to be something we need to do, but right now we're not doing as much arithmetic on pen and paper anymore. And math very much isn't about arithmetic anyway, as most mathematicians will tell you. But there's a lot of insight required for mathematics. So as we're training people in mathematics, we're teaching them insight, we're teaching them logical thinking. That's as true 100 years ago as it is now. And it'll probably still be true in 100 years. That's where math will still be in 100 years. It'll be insight, it'll be thinking, it'll be coming up with how we understand our world in its most abstract fashion. And there's a reason why, incidentally, that all the advanced degrees, doctoral degrees, they're all PhDs, right? Even in math, philosophy, doctorate, right? In math, because you understand the philosophy of mathematics. You're understanding how we abstract at the most fundamental level, how we abstract our world. And when we're looking at engineering, right, we're looking at how we create and use and build systems of things. And it's really the application of systems in a lot of ways. Technology, algorithms. How do we take algorithms and how do we turn those algorithms into products? A lot of science, again, is basically understanding our universe, understanding our place in it, understanding how we interact with it, understanding how it interacts with us. And we're still doing that. We're probably still going to be doing that. We've been doing that for thousands of years. We're probably still going to be doing that for thousands of years. And people were still learning ideas like, force equals mass times acceleration. We're all still learning that in physics. Now, we also learned around the same time that works for most things that we encounter in our day-to-day lives, but then we also learned something about relativity and the corrections to those formulas because science is advanced. So we learned that force equals mass times acceleration is a very good estimate for most of what we encounter in our day-to-day lives. But for things going at about the speed of light or things that are as tiny as an electron, we might need to make a few corrections to that force equals mass times acceleration equation. And we learned that too. And as we learn more about our universe and we learn about how it works, that baseline knowledge will keep going up. And for example, as we learn how to use calculators, it'll mean we have to spend less time on grinding through certain problems and being able to work on more abstract and more advanced problems. So keeping that in mind, that's how universities should be evolving the STEM degree. I would argue same philosophy, but what we're upgrading is where the baseline is. We're upgrading where the grind is to get that basic level of knowledge and understanding. And we do need to rethink how we're going to do that. So, for instance, when I was teaching statistics, once upon a time we had to do all this statistical calculation on pen and paper. Not my day, actually. Even it was before my day, before I started learning statistics. But even still, even when I was teaching statistics, when we had these advanced programs, SPSS, we had R, we have all the rest of that stuff, MATLAB, I was still making my students do early calculations by hand so that they could get an intuitive idea of what the computer's replacing them in doing. When you run that correlation, what is the computer actually doing for you? Take a moment to do that. When you tell the computer, run a t-test for me, what's it actually doing? What math is it going through so that you get a feel for what it's doing and why and how and so on. And that helps you understand whether you've got a right answer or a wrong answer. It tells you what to ask. And that's another very important skill, incidentally, in training for example, a doctorate is learning how to ask the right questions. And that's going to also be a very, very important part of STEM degrees. It has been, it's going to continue to be. So I teach my students how to use the computer, but I also teach them how to ask the right questions of the computer. How do you know what to put in? How do you know how to evaluate the output? And so now they're not running correlations by hand, but they still understand what a correlation does, what it's for example, its relationship to the distance formula, trying to understand averages, trying to understand relationships, correlations, not causation, all that stuff. And so they learn what to do with all the answers that the computer gives it and how to do it without the pencil and paper that we used to need in the past. But the philosophy of it is still the same. You still need to fundamentally understand correlation. You need to understand statistics. And you need to understand how to use all this to actually create practical conclusions and understandings of how the universe works and what we should be doing with it. And I think that more than anything else is we understand our knowledge of ourselves and our understanding of the universe around us and that interaction, then can we learn what kind of tools AI can provide for us and how we can use those things to make our lives better, to make our work easier, to enhance the uniqueness that we have and that we contribute to the universe, rather than letting AI define us. So what other
Thank
questions
you.
folks have?
Any other questions? There was one more question, Professor Oren. What skills are actually valuable in candidates now that AI can handle much of the technical execution?
So I think I did cover that one earlier. I was saying that it was about creativity. I was saying
Hmm.
insight, critical thinking, and being able to evaluate answers. That stuff is all going to be huge. What is a bit of a challenge right now, though, is that the education system is not necessarily doing all of that. And we're not always having the opportunity to train students on creative thinking, critical thinking, all the rest of that stuff. That's one of the biggest challenges that we need to work through as we're developing our education system. So I'm seeing also two new questions here. One is, what responsibility do universities have when the degrees they market no longer guarantee the outcomes they once did? Well, there are differing opinions on this. Mine is a huge one. And I think there needs to be truth in advertising, and I think that the universities have the responsibility of knowing what the job market is, knowing whether they are training students for the market. But there's a bit of a problem. When we start saying market, we run into a problem here. And it raises an important question. When you attend a university, right? When you're paying to go to university, are you a customer or are you a student? And what I'm going to point out, and this is, the dirty truth, is those two are mutually exclusive. You cannot be both. You are either a customer or you are a student. Customers, right? When what we say about customers, right? The customer is always right, and actually that's incorrect. It's actually the customer is always right in matters of taste. But never mind that. If the people that are attending universities are customers, then they're a market, they're deciding what they want, and so on and so on. The problem is, then they're trying to say how they should be taught, what they should be taught, and so on and so on, but they don't have the qualifications or the expertise for that. There's an extent to which when you're a student, like when I was a student, when I was a student, I recognized I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I need to learn. I don't know, where my skills may be lacking. And so I'm not going to come in here and tell everybody this is what I want and this is what I need and so on, and then say I'm not getting this if they're doing something, if the professors are doing something that I think is unexpected, because they know how to teach it, I don't, or at least not then. They knew how to teach it, I did not. They could assess my skill set, I could not. They could assess the body of knowledge that was out there and know what I needed to learn and what I didn't, what was important and what was not, and I didn't. They could see my learning style and pick up on what directions I was most likely to do well in, and I did not. But if I were a customer coming in trying to, like, when you're a customer, you're coming in, you're looking at a menu, you're trying to order things. That's what customers are. But what happens when you come into a place, you don't know anything, you don't know what you don't know even, like you're not even sure what your lack of knowledge is, and you're going to come in here and start, making orders? It doesn't work well. So what is a university now? We really have to think that through, because that's been changing. We're seeing, and I will not say which dean said this to me, but when I was at one of the universities where I was a professor, the dean actually said to me point blank, your job is customer service. That's what he said to me. Um, well, I can do customer service as my job, but then I'm not a teacher anymore. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a professor. I'm not teaching these students, and I'm no longer preparing them for the real world, which I've been in and I know how it works. I'm now a customer service agent where other people who are not necessarily teachers are telling me what to do. So part of that is when we say what responsibility do universities have? Well, what responsibility are we letting them take also? Are we going into universities and insisting that we're customers that get to tell the universities what to do? Or are we coming in and paying for access to teachers who are going to tell us what we want, what we need to know, what we need to learn, and so on? And so you could argue that if somebody comes into a university as a customer, they're misusing the system. And so they absolve the university of its responsibilities because they're coming in with the wrong intent and with the wrong use. Right? It's like buying a screwdriver to whack in a nail. Okay, fine, but well, you're responsible for purchasing the screwdriver. And if you say, I need to get in a nail, now give me that screwdriver so I can do it. Do you actually expect the shopkeeper to say, well, no, that's not necessarily the best idea? Especially because if the shopkeeper does say, no, that's not the best idea, they just go, you know what? I'm just going to buy my screwdriver somewhere else. You're a horrible shopkeeper. That's what we're doing to universities. And when we do that, we absolve them of their responsibilities. When we come in as students and not customers, which is what we're supposed to be when we go into a university, then they are fully responsible when the degrees they market no longer guarantee the outcomes they once did. But the thing is, one of the main reasons why that's happening is that the people that go to universities now are customers and not students. And that means they're not letting the universities do what they're supposed to do. The students, or rather, I should say the customers, as it were, are not creating those allowances, and that's where things are going wrong. I think that's the main thing that's going wrong. So yes, if we come in as students, and then yes, the universities have full responsibility for making that happen. But if we don't, then I think that's as much on us as it is on the universities. Because my grandfather, may rest in peace, always used to say, "Without money, even God goes out of business." So right now we're playing this customer game with the universities, say it's a money game here. Okay, well, are we surprised? So hopefully that covers it. I see another question. Do you have any recommendations on how to get to know yourself better? So on my blog, I've actually written about that in more extensive detail. So that's drorindavis .medium.com. And I'll actually also put that in the chat for folks. But I would say, in short, the main thing to look at, or at least a great place to start, is your preferences. Silly things even. What do you like? What do you don't? What vegetables do you like and not like? What pieces of art do you like and not like? I see everybody right now posting their Spotify rap at the end of the year. How is yours really reflect you? Is that a good reflection of you? Does that reflect your taste? Why? Like, even going for those superficial things, it's actually very helpful, and you probably are thinking to yourself, but these superficial, so what? I learn about myself by the fact that I don't like broccoli. Yes, especially if you understand why you don't like broccoli. In my case, I just find it bitter and I don't like the consistency. That's just a thing. And it's weird because I'm obviously drinking coffee. I like some bitter things. So what about the bitterness of broccoli versus the bitterness of coffee? I'm learning about what else I might like. And that's helpful. And that lets me predict other things that I might like. The other thing we often miss as we're trying to understand our uniqueness and learn about ourselves is we often look at things as, every piece of ourselves is generic. For example, I don't like broccoli. There's a whole lot of people that don't like broccoli. So what's so interesting about that? But there's an exercise I used to do with my business students that really helped them understand their uniqueness. And I'll talk about one. I was teaching in the New York area. And so I asked my students, these are undergrads, most of them are from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. There are folks from other places also. But I said to people, okay, show of hands, how many people in this room, like me, are from New Jersey? And of course, there's a whole lot of hands go up, and I am a New Jersey native, Jersey born, Jersey proud. There's a whole lot of hands go up. I say, okay, everybody put your hands down. How many of you are Devils fans? This is New Jersey's hockey team. And, like me, you're all Devils fans. All right, a whole bunch of people put their hands up. Okay, now everybody put your hands down. How many of you speak 3 languages? And a few hands go up, along with mine. And then I say, okay, how many of you had a great grandparent when you were born? And a few hands go up. And then I say, okay, now how many of you are from New Jersey, you're Devils fans, you speak 3 languages, and had a great grandparent, and suddenly I'm the only person with the hand up? And yet each one of those things is a totally generic thing, and that's the power of the and here. Because even though there's 30 some odd people in that room, I'm the only person who's actually got all 4 of those things. All 4 of those very generic things. There's probably billions of people on this planet that speak 3 languages. Probably even over 1 billion people that were born with a great grandparent. There's millions upon millions of people that are from New Jersey, and especially at this local university, there's going to be a lot of New Jersey people. And if you're from New Jersey, you're probably a fan of its hockey team. But suddenly it's this, I'm from New Jersey, and I'm a Devils fan, and I speak 3 languages, and I was actually born with a great grandparent. These 4 very generic things, and yet in this particular room, I'm the only one who's got that. And if you think globally, I'm nowhere near the only person. I might be the only person in a room of 30 or 40, but I'm not going to be the only person, around for that. But you can see me quickly adding a few other generic things. Let's just take those 4 things, and then I'm going to say lived in California as well, like I did. Now, how many people have lived in California? How many people from New Jersey have lived in California? How many people from New Jersey that had a great grandparent lived in California? How many of those people are Devils fans? I've met other Devils fans while I lived in California. But then you add that 3 language thing, and then you add the great grandparent thing, and right, all of a sudden it's fewer people. And that's the thing. Every one of those things is totally generic. And as you keep adding these generic things together, suddenly you get, for example, Irini Courtney, like this one unique Irini, and it's the only one. And the thing is, when we talk about ourselves, we just keep thinking, I'm just this generic thing. I do these generic things. That's true. But when you add them all up, you're the only one who's done them. It's not the one thing. It's the one thing and the other thing and the other thing and the other thing, right? It's like saying, I can add, I went to Brandeis. There's lots of people that went to Brandeis, but I can just throw that extra thing in, and suddenly it's a much smaller group of people. And again, it seems like a generic thing because there have been so many Brandeis alumni, and so on. And as we get to know ourselves, part of what we have to do is not toss aspects of ourselves away because we think they're generic, right? I say, I don't like broccoli, big deal. Okay. But more than that. You use those things as places to get started. It's putting a stake in the ground. It's starting to map the territory. And you build it out from there, and you can get something incredible out of that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Davis. This has been an incredibly enlightening discussion. A big thank you to our guest, Dr. Orin Davis, for sharing his experiences and expertise. Thank you to our guests for attending this session. Remember, you can stay connected with Zero Day Dispatch through our website, newsletter, our LinkedIn page, Slack, and other social media platforms, all of which I've added to our chat here. And we really look forward to continuing these crucial conversations. Until next time, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. That was incredibly enlightening, and I love the dynamic discussion and all the topics you covered. Thank you.
Pleasure being with. Thanks, all.